What's up, guys? So you're thinking about getting into bike racing. There's a lot of options about the type, and I was surprised when I looked through YouTube. I couldn't really find a video that just kind of like maybe recommended different types of bike racing. Now, I'm a total beginner, but I have raced a lot of different things. I do a lot of different types of mountain biking, road biking, gravel riding, and I've done time trials, so I kind of have a pretty good sense of what the different types of races are like. So I thought, heck, I can give you, for a beginner's recommendations for what you should do if you want to try out bike racing. So I'm going to go from least recommended to most recommended. And these are all good. I'm not saying you shouldn't do these, but this is, in my opinion, only my opinion, least recommended to most recommended. Let's get started. Least recommended is Criterium. And oddly enough, it's probably the one you're going to have the most options and most opportunities to do. They're pretty common right now, pretty popular. The problem with Criterium for a new racer is if you haven't had a chance to practice them, you don't have a really fast group to ride with, a cutthroat group that is not going to cut you any slack. When you get into a real Criterium, you're probably going to get dropped really fast. You're going to get kicked out of the back, and then once you're out of the peloton, once you're out of that pack, they're going to lap you really fast. Probably going to lap you pretty fast. Your race could be over in just literally like 5 minutes. I mean, a lap is usually going to be about 2.5, 3 minutes or something. So you could be over really quick. It's pretty intimidating, pretty intense. People take it really seriously. The danger level's up, the adrenaline's up, and you could have a really bad time that turns you off. My buddy Luke really got turned off by Criterium racing when he tried it once. Okay, my second least recommended type of racing is road racing. And the problem with road racing is that it's sort of similar to Criterium. It's very serious, not necessarily always going to be the most friendly environment. If you're not on a team, you might feel kind of awkward. If you don't have the best and coolest stuff, you might feel kind of awkward. And your race, you could get dropped again, but at least in a road race you can finish the race. You don't have to worry about getting kicked out, and pack dynamics are a little simpler in a road race because oftentimes you're not constantly turning, so it's a little bit less dangerous, I think. My next least recommended is time trial. And time trial is actually, I think, a pretty good way to test yourself out, as long as you understand that it's a very technical discipline and aerodynamics are hugely important. So if you don't have the right aerodynamic gear, you could be, like if you haven't put a lot of time or effort into, learning how to ride aero bars and having the right gear, having a good setup, you could be kind of left behind on that. But the nice thing about it is you just do your pace. You test yourself against everybody else there. You're alone. You don't have to worry about missing anybody else's ride or getting yelled at or anything. So pretty good way to test yourself out in a low stress environment. I did sort of like a practice time trial series for a long time, and it was pretty enjoyable. Okay, next up I've got Gran Fondo. Now, we're starting to get into the, maybe like not recommended to more into the more highly recommended here. Gran Fondos are pretty laid back usually. A lot of times it may not even feel like you're in a race, which could be a problem if you want a more race-like experience. But with the Gran Fondo, you may have some time sections. The entire thing could be timed, but I think usually there's time sections, so you can sort of test yourself on those time sections, and it's a way more laid-back environment. You're not going to have to worry about looking foolish or anything. My next more recommended is gravel. Now, gravel is an awesome way for a new racer to try it out, because the difficulty level, I mean, gravel, yeah, you're riding on gravel. There's, it's a little trickier than road. It could have some big climbs. It could have some rough sections. But for the most part, it's really all about like the gravel grind, putting in the endurance. Packs kind of form in gravel, but they're usually kind of strung out because of the nature of finding a spot to ride on a gravel road. People can't ride 2 inches from each other and cluster up real tight. So it's a much more laid back. Oftentimes the race is more about just you against the course instead of you fighting tooth and nail with everybody else there. So a lot of people are not even there to race. They just treat it more like a ride, and they don't really care what their time is. They just want to have fun and finish. So again, kind of a problem. If you really want that like intense race experience, you may not get it in a gravel race, but it's a great way to just try out racing for the first time or get into it as a beginner. Next up, I've got cross-country mountain bike. Now, this is, so far we've been covering road. Mountain bike, totally different discipline. But if you want to try out racing, this is another awesome way to try out racing because you don't have the pack dynamics. It's way more laid back. It's way more beginner friendly, I think. And less structure oftentimes to the events. You don't have to worry about what category you're in and all that kind of, maybe you probably don't even need to mess with a racing license in a lot of cases and stuff like that. Great. And I mean, there's danger. You could, if you're out of control and hitting a tree or falling off a cliff or something, but for the most part they're a lot safer, I think, than being in a pack on in a crit or something. My most recommended, and this is funny because I've never actually done an official cyclocross race. I've done some fun cyclocross races and events type things, but I think cyclocross, if you have that option, if you live in a place where there's a cyclocross scene and there's races available, I think it would probably be my #1 pick for a good way to try out racing, get into racing, because again, the vibe is really laid back. Cyclocross racing is fun. If you don't there's no pack, you don't have to worry. You just do your race. You see how you come in. You got to work on your bike skills, your handling skills. Lots of things could happen, and the cost of having an accident or something is probably just going to be a muddy kit or a dirty kit instead of broken bones and stuff. So cyclocross, I think, is a great way. I mean, there's no bad way to get into racing. It's just if you're not prepared, I think cyclocross and cross-country mountain bike and gravel are going to be a little more, beginner friendly. I think that, like if you have the opportunity, practice type races, practice type events for whatever discipline you want to get into are hugely valuable, because the difference between going for a group ride that you think is pretty hardcore and an actual race is massively different. And, if you want to have the most fun, be prepared and be ready for it. But that's my idea. That's my idea. If you have differences of opinion or you have something that I've left out, I guess I didn't even include like racing on Zwift. Probably the best way to try out racing, since you can do it from home and there's zero fear of failure. I've failed in so many Zwift races and I just log off, So Zwift racing is another great way to try it out. And there's a lot of similarities. They feel very similar. The amount of pain that you go through on the bike is pretty similar on the trainer as it would be in real life. All right, thanks guys. Hope you enjoyed it. You're never too old to try it. I would highly recommend it. Get into some events, try out something. It's off season right now, so you get prepared. See ya.